The aliens didn't come to Earth to conquer humanity. They didn't come for our resources. They didn't even come seeking help. They came because they were running from something so terrifying that entire civilizations disappeared whenever it appeared. And the worst part? A few years after we rescued them, humanity discovered that the thing they feared most was already on its way to Earth. 3 years had passed since the Illyrians crashed on Earth. During those years, humanity experienced the greatest technological revolution in its history. Diseases that had once killed millions were cured. New energy systems provided unlimited clean power. Food shortages became rare. Transportation became faster and safer. Cities transformed into futuristic marvels. For many people, life had never been better. The Illyrians were no longer seen as strangers. They had become trusted allies. Children learned about them in schools. Scientists worked beside them in laboratories. Governments consulted them on important decisions. Yet despite all this progress, there was one thing the Illyrians never forgot: the darkness. Every time the topic was mentioned, a shadow crossed their faces. Even after years on Earth, the fear remained. Among them, none carried that fear more heavily than Kale. He often spent hours watching the stars, silently searching the heavens, as though expecting something terrible to appear at any moment. Dr. Elena Carter had become one of his closest friends, and one evening, she found him standing alone beneath the night sky. The city lights glittered in the distance, while thousands of stars shone above. "You still believe it's coming, don't you?" Elena asked. Kale remained silent for several seconds. Finally, he answered, "I don't believe it is coming. I know it is." Elena sighed. She wanted to believe he was wrong. Humanity had seen no evidence of any threat. No mysterious ships. No hostile signals. Nothing. Yet Kale's certainty disturbed her. It was the certainty of someone who had survived a nightmare. The next morning, events took an unexpected turn. Deep inside the original crash site, scientists finally opened a sealed section of the alien spacecraft that had remained inaccessible since the day it fell to Earth. For years they had tried every method imaginable. Nothing worked. Then suddenly the ancient locking system responded. Massive doors slowly opened. Beyond them lay a chamber unlike anything discovered before. The room stretched for hundreds of meters. Strange crystal structures lined the walls. Soft blue light glowed throughout the darkness. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by towering columns covered in alien symbols. Researchers immediately realized they had found something important. Very important. Elena was called to the site within hours. As she entered the chamber, she noticed the atmosphere among the scientists. Everyone seemed excited and nervous at the same time. One researcher approached her quickly. "You need to see this." He led her toward the center of the room, where a holographic display floated above the platform. Symbols moved across the air like living light. Moments later, Kale arrived. The instant he stepped into the chamber, his expression changed. His eyes widened. Fear appeared on his face. Elena had never seen him react that way before. "Do you recognize this place?" she asked. Kale stared at the platform. "Yes." "What is it?" His answer sent chills through the room. "This is the archive." The word immediately captured everyone's attention. Scientists gathered around him. "Archive?" Elena asked. Kale nodded slowly. Every major Illyrian vessel carried one. It contains the knowledge of our civilization. Silence filled the chamber. Humanity had just discovered the greatest treasure in alien history. Over the following weeks, teams worked around the clock, translating the data. The amount of information was staggering. Scientific discoveries, historical records, cultural archives, star maps, medical research, entire libraries of knowledge. Humanity learned more about the Illyrians in a few months than in all the previous years combined. At first, the information seemed hopeful. The Illyrians had once ruled a vast and peaceful civilization. Their worlds were beautiful. Their technology was extraordinary. Their people had explored countless stars. But buried within the archive were files marked with the highest security classification. Even Kale appeared nervous when those files were discovered. After weeks of effort, the encrypted records were finally unlocked. What they revealed shocked everyone. The first recording showed a thriving alien world. Gigantic cities stretched across a landscape. Advanced vehicles filled the skies. Millions of beings lived peaceful lives. Then warning sirens began sounding. People stopped and looked upward. Panic spread. Families ran through crowded streets. Emergency broadcasts appeared everywhere. The sky itself seemed to darken. Then the recording abruptly ended. Another video began. Different planet, different species, same outcome. Panic, fear, darkness, then extinction. More recordings followed. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Entire civilizations erased. Entire world destroyed. The researchers sat in stunned silence. Nobody had expected evidence on this scale. Humanity had always imagined itself as a tiny part of a vast universe. Now it seemed the universe contained a predator. Something was hunting intelligent life. Something ancient. Something powerful. The archive contained one final message recorded shortly before the Illyrians fled their homeworld. The image showed chaos. Cities burned. Emergency evacuation ships launched into orbit. Crowds filled every street. The speaker looked exhausted and terrified. He spoke directly into the camera. If anyone discovers this message, know that we fought until the end. We searched for answers. We searched for weapons. We searched for hope. We found none. The darkness cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be escaped forever. The recording ended. Nobody spoke for several minutes. The room felt colder somehow, more oppressive, as if the message itself carried the fear of a dying civilization. Yet the most frightening discovery came weeks later. Scientists studying damage footage from multiple extinct worlds noticed a strange pattern. Hidden within the recordings was a shape. At first it appeared to be a distortion, a flaw in the data, but the shape appeared again and again. Different planets, different times, same shadow. Advanced image reconstruction systems were used to enhance the footage. Slowly the image became clearer. The object was enormous, larger than any spacecraft humanity had ever imagined, thousands of miles across. At first scientists assumed it must be some kind of artificial structure, but the data revealed something impossible. The object was mechanical. It was biological, alive. The discovery divided the scientific community. Some refused to believe it. Others argued the evidence was undeniable. If the analysis was correct, the thing responsible for countless extinctions wasn't a fleet of ships. It was a living organism of unimaginable size. A creature capable of crossing interstellar space. A creature older than recorded history. A creature that viewed civilizations the same way humans viewed insects. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Astronomers analyzing deep space gravitational data detected an anomaly beyond the edge of explored space. At first it seemed insignificant, a slight distortion, a minor fluctuation. But as more data arrived, a terrifying pattern emerged. The anomaly was moving. More importantly, it was moving toward the solar system. Independent observatories confirmed the readings. Government agencies repeated the calculations. Artificial intelligence systems analyzed every possibility. The conclusion remained the same. Something massive was approaching Earth. The announcement was kept secret initially. World leaders met behind closed doors. Military commanders demanded contingency plans. Scientists argued over the evidence. Intelligence agencies searched desperately for alternative explanations. None were found. Finally, the information reached Kale. He listened quietly as astronomers explained their findings. They showed him charts, simulations, trajectories, distances, timelines. When they finished speaking, the room became silent. Kale stared at the images for a long time. Then he lowered his head. It found us. Nobody needed to ask what he meant. Every person in the room understood. After crossing the stars, after losing their home, after traveling 60 light years to escape extinction, the enemy the Illyrians feared had discovered their location once again, and this time Earth stood directly in its path. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming about first contact with alien life. Now it faced a horrifying truth. It wasn't alone in the universe. And something out there had been hunting intelligent civilizations for longer than human history itself. Worse still, the hunt was almost over. The hunter was coming. And Earth was next. Humanity had always believed that space was mostly empty. Endless darkness, countless stars, vast distances separating one civilization from another. But now, for the first time in history, scientists were forced to confront a terrifying possibility. Space was not empty. Something was moving through it. Something ancient. Something alive. The announcement remained classified, known only to a handful of world leaders, military commanders, and senior researchers. Publicly, life continued as normal. People went to work. Children attended school. Cities remained filled with lights and laughter. Nobody knew that somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system, an unknown entity was approaching. Deep beneath New Haven, the International Space Defense Council held its first emergency meeting. Representatives from every major nation gathered around a massive circular table. Screens displayed star maps and astronomical data. The atmosphere was tense. Fear lingered in every corner of the room. Dr. Elena Carter sat beside Cale as scientists presented their findings. The object is still extremely far away, one astronomer explained, but its movement pattern is impossible to ignore. It is changing direction repeatedly. A military commander frowned. You mean it's navigating? The scientist hesitated before answering. Yes. Silence filled the chamber. If the object was adjusting its course, then it wasn't drifting through space randomly. It was choosing where to go. It was heading somewhere. And every calculation suggested that destination was Earth. Cale stared at the data with growing concern. The movement pattern reminded him of stories told by survivors from worlds that no longer existed. The same stories as people had dismissed for centuries. The same stories they regretted ignoring. Suddenly, another scientist rushed into the room, carrying a tablet. We found something. Everyone turned toward him. A signal. The room became completely silent. The scientist placed the tablet on the table. A strange sequence appeared across the screen. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It repeated continuously. Again and again. Elena leaned forward. Where did this come from? Deep Space Monitoring Array 7. Can it be translated? The scientist shook his head. Not yet. Cale looked at the pattern and immediately became pale. I've seen this before. Every eye turned toward him. Where? Elena asked. Cale swallowed slowly. In the final transmission from my home world. Fear spread through the room instantly. The signal continued repeating across the screen. Nobody knew its meaning. Yet everyone understood one thing. Whatever was approaching Earth was no longer merely a theory. It was communicating. Or perhaps worse. It was announcing its arrival. Far beyond the solar system. Hidden among the darkness between stars. Something ancient continued moving toward humanity. And for the first time, humanity realized it might not have much time left. The signal never stopped. Hour after hour, day after day. It continued arriving from the depths of space. The pattern remained unchanged. A sequence of pulses repeating over and over again. Scientists from every major nation worked together trying to decode it. Artificial intelligence systems analyzed billions of possible interpretations. Quantum computers processed endless combinations. Nothing worked. The message refused to reveal its meaning. Yet one fact became impossible to ignore. The signal was growing stronger. Whatever was transmitting, it was getting closer. Inside the International Space Defense Council headquarters, tension continued rising. Governments had managed to keep the discovery secret from the public, but maintaining that secrecy was becoming increasingly difficult. Thousands of scientists were now involved. Military forces had quietly begun expanding planetary defense programs. New satellites were launched almost every week. Shipyards worked around the clock, constructing experimental spacecraft. Officially, these projects were described as scientific initiatives. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth. Humanity was preparing for war. The problem was that nobody knew who or what they would be fighting. One evening, Elena Carter sat alone inside her office, studying the latest signal analysis. Coffee cups covered her desk. Most had gone cold hours ago. Her eyes burned from exhaustion. For nearly 3 months, she had reviewed the transmission every day. Still nothing. Still no answers. Suddenly, her computer emitted a notification. A new report had arrived. She opened it immediately. Within seconds, her exhaustion disappeared. The report contained something extraordinary. The signal had changed. For the first time since its discovery, the pattern was different. Elena grabbed her tablet and rushed toward the operations center. By the time she arrived, dozens of scientists were already gathered around the main display. Large screens showed the updated transmission. The repeating sequence had vanished. A new sequence had appeared, more complex, more structured, more deliberate. One researcher looked up as Elena entered. "You need to hear this." The audio playback began. At first it sounded like static. Then strange tones emerged. Low frequencies, rhythmic pulses, almost like a language. The room remained silent as the sounds continued. Then Kale entered. The moment he heard the transmission, he froze. His face immediately lost color. Elena noticed. "What is it?" Kale didn't answer. The audio continued playing. His hands began trembling. The room watched him carefully. Finally, he whispered something in his native language. The translation software hanging around his neck activated instantly. "It knows." The room fell silent. Elena stared at him. "What knows?" Kale looked toward the speakers. The darkness. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The audio recording ended. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything they had experienced before. "What do you mean?" Elena asked. Kale swallowed. "When our world began disappearing, survivors reported receiving transmissions shortly before the attacks." A scientist frowned. "Transmissions from who?" Kale slowly turned toward him. "From it." Fear spread throughout the room. For years, humanity had been trying to determine whether the entity approaching Earth was intelligent. Now they had an answer. It was. The realization changed everything. A natural disaster could not be negotiated with. A black hole could not be reasoned with. But intelligence meant purpose, and purpose meant choice. Whatever was approaching Earth wasn't acting on instinct alone. It was making decisions. The following weeks became the most intense period of scientific activity in human history. Every resource available was focused on understanding the transmission. Linguists joined the effort. Cryptographers joined the effort. Artificial intelligence systems were upgraded specifically for analysis. Then a breakthrough finally occurred. An AI designed to detect communication structures identified repeating mathematical relationships hidden within the signal. The discovery shocked everyone. Mathematics was often considered a universal language. Any advanced civilization would understand it. The signal contained prime numbers, geometric sequences, complex equations. Someone or something was deliberately attempting communication. As researchers dug deeper, additional patterns emerged. The transmission wasn't random. It was a message, a real message. For the first time in history, humanity prepared to receive a communication from an unknown intelligence beyond Earth. The event was kept secret. Only a select group of officials and scientists were allowed access. Millions of people continued living normal lives without realizing that history was about to change forever. Finally, the translation system produced a result. The room filled with nervous anticipation. Scientists gathered around the central display. Military officers stood silently nearby. World leaders connected through secure communication networks. Kale sat beside Elena. His expression suggested he already knew what was coming. The translation appeared. One sentence. Only 4 words. For simple words. Yet they froze every person in the room. "We have found you." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The words remained glowing on the screen. A military commander broke the silence first. "Is that accurate?" The lead researcher nodded. "We checked it 27 times. The commander looked pale. 27? Every translation system produced the same result. The room became silent again. The implications were horrifying. The signal wasn't a greeting. It wasn't an introduction. It wasn't a request for communication. It was a declaration. Something had found Earth, and it wanted humanity to know. Several world leaders immediately demanded emergency consultations. Arguments erupted. Some believed humanity should attempt a response. Others argued that responding would reveal additional information about Earth. Military representatives pushed for accelerated weapons development. Scientists insisted that understanding the entity remained the highest priority. Meanwhile, Kale remained silent. Elena eventually approached him. "You expected this, didn't you?" Kale nodded slowly. "My people received similar messages." Elena's stomach tightened. What happened afterward? For several seconds, Kale didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded distant, as though he were reliving terrible memories. Entire worlds disappeared. The word sent chills through her body. Outside the secure facilities, the world continued spinning. Cities remained alive with activity. Children laughed in parks. Families planned vacations. Businesses opened and closed. Nobody knew that somewhere beyond the stars, an ancient intelligence had just announced its awareness of humanity. But the most terrifying discovery was still ahead. Because only days after the first translated message, astronomers noticed something impossible. The object approaching Earth was accelerating. Not slightly, not gradually, dramatically. Every new observation confirmed the same conclusion. It was moving faster, much faster, as though it had received information, as though it had become excited, as though it was no longer searching, because now it knew exactly where its target was. And every calculation showed the same horrifying result. Its arrival time had just been cut in half. Humanity thought it had decades to prepare. Now it might only have years. And for the first time since the Illyrians arrived on Earth, world leaders began asking a question nobody wanted to answer. What happens if we lose? The question echoed through every secure government facility on Earth. What happens if we lose? For weeks, nobody answered it. Not because they didn't want to, because nobody knew the answer. The translated message had changed everything. Before the transmission, humanity was dealing with a theory, a possibility, a distant threat hidden somewhere among the stars. Now the threat had spoken, and its first words were enough to terrify every world leader. "We have found you." The message spread through classified networks like wildfire. Military commanders demanded immediate action. Scientists demanded more research. Politicians demanded certainty. But certainty was the one thing nobody could provide. Deep inside the International Space Defense Council headquarters, emergency meetings continued day and night. Entire floors of the facility remained active 24 hours a day. Sleep became a luxury. Every passing hour seemed important. Every new piece of information could determine the future of humanity. Elena Carter hadn't gone home in nearly 3 weeks. Her office had become her bedroom. Her laboratory had become her entire world. One evening, she sat alone reviewing newly recovered data from the Illyrian archive. The room was dark except for the glow of holographic screens. Thousands of documents floated before her. Most contained historical records, scientific research, astronomical observations. Then she found something unusual. A classified military file. Its security clearance exceeded almost everything else in the archive. Curious, she opened it. The file contained a list of star systems. Hundreds of them, every one marked with the same symbol. A warning symbol. At first, she didn't understand its meaning. Then she noticed something terrifying. Every listed civilization had been destroyed. Every single one. The realization sent chills through her body. The Illyrians had been tracking the darkness for centuries, maybe even longer. As she continued reading, another discovery emerged. The archive contained estimates, predictions, timelines, records from civilizations that had encountered the entity before their destruction. Most survived only a few years after receiving the first transmission. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Immediately, she contacted Kale. Within minutes, he arrived. The moment he saw the files, his expression darkened. "You found the old predictions. What are they?" Kale remained silent for several seconds. Then he answered, "They were our attempt to understand the pattern." Elena pointed toward the data. According to this, civilizations don't survive long after contact. Kale nodded slowly. Most don't. The answer felt like a punch to the chest. For years, humanity had imagined itself as a powerful species. Masters of technology, explorers of space, builders of civilization. Now they were discovering that, on a cosmic scale, they might still be helpless. The next morning brought even worse news. Astronomers monitoring the approaching anomaly detected another acceleration. The object was moving faster again. Much faster. The calculations were repeated dozens of times. The results never changed. Something was actively increasing its speed, as though it was in a hurry. The updated projections arrived at council headquarters that afternoon. When the meeting began, nobody looked optimistic. A giant holographic display dominated the center of the room. The approaching object glowed red against the darkness of space. Scientists presented their findings. Silence filled the chamber. Then the lead astronomer delivered the news everyone feared. Our previous estimates were incorrect. A military commander frowned. What does that mean? The scientist took a deep breath. It will arrive sooner than expected. The commander folded his arms. How much sooner? The answer changed the room forever. 7 years. Nobody spoke. Several leaders simply stared. Others looked down at the table. 7 years. That was all. 7 years before first contact. 7 years before humanity faced an enemy that had erased countless civilizations. 7 years to prepare. 7 years to survive. Or 7 years until extinction. Outside the classified facilities, ordinary people remained unaware. They continued living normal lives, going to work, planning weddings, starting families, building futures. They didn't know that a countdown had begun. A countdown toward the greatest crisis in human history. The secret remained hidden for another 6 months. Then everything changed. The leak began with a single anonymous file uploaded to the internet. Most people ignored it initially. Conspiracy theories appeared online every day. This seemed no different. The file contained fragments of classified reports, astronomical images, portions of a translated transmission. Most viewers assumed it was fake. Then more documents appeared. Then more. Then more. Within days, the story exploded. News organizations began investigating. Government officials denied everything, but the evidence kept growing. Eventually, denial became impossible. Humanity learned the truth. The reaction was immediate. Global panic erupted. Stock markets crashed. Mass protests appeared in major cities. Religious movements expanded rapidly. Millions demanded answers. Millions more demanded protection. The world had officially entered a new era, the age of fear. Governments responded by revealing only limited information. They confirmed the existence of the Illyrians. They confirmed the existence of the transmission. They confirmed an unidentified object was approaching Earth, but they avoided discussing the worst details. They never mentioned the destroyed civilizations. They never mentioned extinction. They never mentioned the darkness. Unfortunately, secrets rarely remain hidden forever, especially not secrets shared among thousands of scientists. Over the following months, additional leaks emerged. The public learned about the archive, the recordings of dead worlds, the warning messages, the ancient cosmic predator. Fear spread everywhere. People began constructing private shelters. Survivalist communities appeared across multiple nations. Some believed humanity was doomed. Others believed humanity would prevail. The world became divided. Hope against fear. Optimism against despair. Meanwhile, deep beneath New Haven, scientists continued searching for answers. And finally they found one. During an analysis of the archive, researchers discovered a damaged file unlike any other. Most records showed civilizations being destroyed. This one showed something different. Resistance. The recording came from an unknown species. Their technology appeared highly advanced, far beyond even the Illyrians. The footage showed enormous fleets gathering in space. Thousands of warships, millions of weapons, entire planets transformed into military fortresses. The species had chosen to fight. For the first time, humanity saw a civilization that refused to run. The recording continued. Battle began. Stars lit up with explosions. Entire fleets vanished. Planets shattered. The scale was unimaginable. Then the footage ended abruptly. Nobody knew whether the civilization survived. Nobody knew who won. But one detail captured everyone's attention. Just before the recording ended, sensors detected something unusual. Damage. The darkness had been damaged. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. For centuries, the entity had seemed unstoppable, invincible, untouchable. Now humanity possessed proof that it could be harmed, maybe not defeated, maybe not destroyed, but harmed. For the first time since the crisis began, hope appeared. Tiny, fragile, but real. When Elena showed the evidence to Kale, he stared at the screen for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not fear, not sadness, hope. Because if the darkness could bleed, then perhaps it could die. And somewhere in the depths of space, racing toward Earth at impossible speed, the ancient predator continued its journey, unaware that its next prey might become the first civilization in history willing to fight back.